Welcome to Noki Bay. The atmosphere here is incredible. Pretty colors, catchy and immersive music, and huge cliffs that make you crane your neck up to see. This should be a Mario fan's dream. But ask anyone who's played this level, and they'd probably tell you they associate it with pain and suffering instead. There are so many cool areas and crevices that fans don't get to appreciate. That's because in this level, Nintendo broke their one crucial Mario rule, to have the platforming be the primary focus and the main driver of the challenge. And yes, this was a common tactic in all of Mario Sunshine, to sacrifice jumping on obstacles in a fun way, in favor of more gimmicky challenges that fit the level storytelling and theme. The high quality levels, like Pinna Park and Pianta Village, managed to strike a balance between platforming and other trials. However, the more lackluster ones, like Bianco Hills and Gelato Beach, don't give the platforming element enough attention, and became boring instead of engaging. Let's examine the essence of Sunshine's main problem, and what breaking the number one rule did for the game as a whole. Mario Sunshine was just the second 3D Mario game ever made. The first one, Mario 64, had a huge focus on platforming. Each world was its own thing, with unique hazards that challenged Mario's limited moveset in different ways. After the introduction in Bob-omb Battlefield, you get Whomp's Fortress, Cool Cool Mountain, and Bowser in the Dark World, all of which are super vertical levels that test your jumping abilities. The most famous level, Tick-Tock Clock, is an incredible blend of convincing world building and tough, snappy platforming. They even went too far in the other direction in Rainbow Ride, which is just a bunch of platforms placed randomly in the sky with no explanation. Now in Mario 64, you can collect the stars in whatever order you like. In Sunshine though, there's a preset order, and this isn't arbitrary. Each episode tells a part of the story that forms the overall progression of the world around you. This is an advantage in the fact that the game can form an engaging narrative, but is it sacrificing too much in favor of the story? Let's take a closer look at Noki Bay. Being underwater is probably the worst part of Mario Sunshine. Sorry, let me rephrase. Being underwater is definitely the worst part of Mario Sunshine. You lose health quickly, your control is limited, and Cheep Cheeps are always out to get you. But they put 3 of the 8 episodes of Noki Bay underwater. First, a Grandpa Noki tells you that the water in the bay is poisoned, and that uncorking the waterfall by defeating the Monty Mole on top will clear it. This is actually a pretty fun level. You get to jump and wall kick your way up the right side of the level, while dodging his goop. When uncorking the waterfall doesn't work, the Noki Elder then tells you to defeat the Gooper Blooper on the very top to clear the water. Again, this is a solid episode. You're forced to use FLUDD to clamber up the left side of the bay and explore the secret caves and alcoves. However, this still doesn't clear the water, and the rest of the levels are just a horrendous torture. The Noki puts you through a red coin test first, and then sends you underwater for the privilege of cleaning the eel's teeth. The next shine is a piantissimo swim across the river, followed by a secret inside the shell. Last is Shadow Mario, and then another underwater level with red coins. And then you're done. That's it? We hardly even explored the main area. This huge cliff, and only 2 of the shines required us to scale it. Okay, you get my point. The eel, red coin bottle, red coin fish, huge portions of this level require 0 platforming. In Mario 64, most stars build on the platforming of the previous one. Each time in Tick-Tock Clock, you go higher and higher, finding a new star every time along the way. But in Noki Bay, each shine tackles a completely different area from the rest. The level even changes for each episode. A lot of people like this because it keeps the world and paths fresh, but it also means a lot less platforming, since in general you only go up a path once. It also means you're not truly going to master this section, unless you go back for the blue coins. For comparison, a game like Bowser's Fury makes you replay every level a bunch, giving a new challenge every time, which helps squeeze the most juice out of the small areas. Gelato Beach has a similar issue, though unlike Noki Bay, it didn't have much promise from the start. Pinna and Serena already have beach sections, so a whole beach world feels unnecessary. And just like Noki, it's got some frustrating gimmicks that follow the story. The Plungellos, Wiggler, Sandbird, and red coins in the coral reefs are all really glitchy, and the challenge comes not from the platforming, but some other mechanic that isn't quite as fun. Gelato has another major issue aside from its annoying bosses though. The mechanic that essentially defines Sunshine's world layout is FLUDD, the Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dowsing device. You've got the hover, turbo, and rocket nozzles at your disposal. The bigger worlds are usually the ones with turbo or rocket, like Gelato, and the smaller ones don't have any special nozzles, like Pinna. Gelato Beach's problem is that the turbo nozzle is pretty out of the way, so most of the time you're just stuck using the hover nozzle, and as a result the level feels kinda empty. With the number of nozzles you can use, most episodes in Mario Sunshine don't have an intended way to go about completing them. And when the nozzles interact in a certain way, Sunshine can truly be a beautiful game. In Noki, you can rocket up the cliffs on the right to get a turbo nozzle, which can take you quickly along the water to the hover nozzle, which helps you get up the cliffs on the left. Or you could just keep the rocket the whole time and go straight to the platforms using ledge grabs. Or you could keep the turbo the whole time and use pure skill to navigate the alcoves. That's actually what speedrunners do to collect the 100 coins quickly. So you see the potential for levels like this or Rico Harbor, where the nozzles have this beautiful interplay in a fairly condensed world. The problem is almost none of the episodes in the game realize this potential, mostly due to how spread out the worlds can be. There's also limits to when you can unlock certain nozzle locations, which is pretty silly given how useless they can be. Like, why keep me from using the turbo in Bianco Hills for so long? I'm probably not even going to use it anyway. Of course, there are some areas where FLUDD isn't available at all. Secrets are isolated locations where the game forces you to do platforming without FLUDD. There are more traditional platforming sections, where the devs had freedom to place blocks wherever they wanted. These places are very weird. They're like liminal spaces with trippy backgrounds and an infinite fall to your doom. I had plenty of nightmares dying in these levels as a kid. But if you can master them, they're really fun areas. And you start to wish that the whole game was played like this. Nintendo chose to separate platforming and world exploration, which means you're rarely doing hardcore platforming in the cool worlds that they've created. Instead, it's just a bunch of random objects in a void. So what's inherently wrong with worlds like Gelato or Sirena? Is there any inherent drawback to being more exploration focused? Well, Mario is suited for platforming. From the very first game, he's rarely had any abilities, so it's all about the cool jumps and kicks he can do. That's what he's made for. What Sunshine does is use FLUDD to open up the possibility for new types of challenges. The thing is, they mostly suck. Just think of the casino puzzles or steering the boat in lily pads. Mastering the spray nozzle is way less fun than mastering Mario's movements. Let's think back to FLUDD's maker, Professor Egad. Egad's other invention? The Poltergust 3000. The Poltergust works great because you can use all of its mechanics while walking around. The same is true for FLUDD, but given the fact that Mario can do so much more than Luigi, it feels wasted on Mario's moveset. It's not easy to use the spray nozzle while jumping and diving about. Usually you have to stop or even go into first person mode to aim. This is why my favorite levels in the game are the ones that force you to dynamically use the hover nozzle, and not the spray nozzle as much. Pinna Park is the best example. It's a tight platforming jungle gym, with moving pirate ships and a giant Ferris wheel you can ride. There's tons of secrets hidden at every corner. It's a nice vibe that fits the vacation theme, while also being exciting enough in a platforming sense. Pianta Village is another one of my favorites. It's a bit more spread out, but it's got some cool platforming challenges in the main episodes, as well as a day-night cycle, which provides immersion and world building. But in general, Sunshine is a rushed game, so for every great shine like the Fluff Festival or the Manta Ray, you'll have 2 shines where you're just trying to avoid the glitches, like Pachinko and the Sandbird. And don't complain about the Manta being too hard. My grandma beat it when she was like 70. You might think with all this that I hate this game. In fact, Mario Sunshine happens to be my favorite game of all time, mostly because it was one of the first ones I played and beat on the GameCube as a kid. It formed amazing memories for me, which is why I love talking about it, even if I'm addressing its shortcomings. And man, I do really appreciate it for going for a completely new, tropical, relaxing vibe with their worlds. There's tons of NPCs to talk to, weird stuff to explore. It's no wonder why so many kids fell in love with this game. But from a design perspective, I totally understand why a lot of people get frustrated with some of the levels in this game, especially since you can't pick which shines to do. You have to play episodes like the Chuckster one. Mario Sunshine is great in its own way, but it really exposed the downsides of breaking the platforming rule in Mario games. Thank you so much for indulging me in this Mario Sunshine video. I've got more than enough thoughts to make another one of these, so drop a like if you enjoyed, and I might just do it. In the meantime, if you want to hear me ramble about another old game, go watch my Mario World video. Later, everyone.